its speed. Then they're going to have some drogue parachutes pop out to stabilize the craft. And then the big main parachutes, 4 big parachutes, will unfurl to lower them down to the splashdown zone with a velocity of about 15 miles per hour. That's how fast they'll be going when they finally hit the water south of Pensacola, Florida. This is the first water landing for U.S. astronauts since 1975, 45 years ago. And of course, all eyes are on that spacecraft waiting for Doug Hurley and Robert Behnken to make it back to Earth after this dramatic test flight.
All right, I want to go ahead and plug into NASA's sound right now and listen as the astronauts are getting ready to lose communications for roughly a 6-minute period.
We'll see them on the other side, expected to regain that communication at about 42 minutes after the hour. So for these next 6 minutes, they're already less than 60 miles in altitude. And this is when the capsule is really heating up during that reentry, reaching temperatures of around 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit. As again, you're essentially hitting the atmosphere at more than 17,000 miles an hour, and the friction building up that plasma around the spacecraft. And that's what's going to prevent us from talking to Bob and Doug or getting data back from the spacecraft for the next 6 minutes. Its flight computers are in control, though. It's going to continue to maintain its appropriate trajectory and attitude, having attitude determination devices on board the capsule, not reliant on communications with satellites. And it's going to continue dragging down the correct path for this splashdown off the coast of Pensacola. So we are in that blackout period. We're going to continue to stand by until we get them on the other side.
So, Scott, we just heard NASA talking about this blackout period, 3,500 degrees, 17,000 miles per hour. Give us an idea of the forces that are involved in this reentry process.
Well, the reentry process, I'm certain, is something that is quite an experience because they've been in a zero gravity atmosphere for 2 months now. So anytime you change gravitational fields that drastically, it's going to be just a big change of forces on your body. But then you add several G's of force due to the reentry, and it's kind of like a long roller coaster ride. But that's what they've trained very hard to do and to be ready for. And so you'd expect it's very exciting and exhilarating. Heart rate is probably going up, and so they're ready for the challenge.
Can you give us a sense of how that feels, that amount of force, and tell us a little bit more about that user experience that Doug and Bob are feeling during this reentry period?
Well, I'll harken it back to my first time in pilot training. The first time I felt G's in an airplane was the very first sortie, and we took off and we accelerated, and we turned out of traffic, we call it, and pulled about 2.5 G's, and so when you're on a 747 flying, to and from the coasts, it's about 1.2 G's maximum, and you don't even really notice the difference. But as soon as we did it that first time, your seat gets really heavy, your arms are hard to pick up, and it's just something you've never experienced before. And so the training that you do in the past, it prepares you for that, but it's a new experience. And so I'm certain that, every time you do it, it feels different if you haven't been doing it for a while. And so G forces for those that have ridden roller coasters, they kind of pull you down in the seat, and the heavier they are, the harder you are to pick up your hands even.
So we're roughly 3 minutes away from communications being restored. As I mentioned, we are in a 6-minute blackout period as the astronauts are making their re-entry. Bill, we heard NASA say that the computers have taken over, but at this point in the flight, can the crew or in the capsule do anything if something starts to go wrong?
No, and the crew really doesn't have much input at all in the whole re-entry process. The Crew Dragon spacecraft is fully automated. The astronauts can take some steps earlier in the profile. They can adjust the start of the deorbit burn, for example, the rocket firing that starts the trip home. But once that firing is over and they're descending toward splashdown, they are strictly along for the ride. There's not much they can do. Right now they're experiencing maximum heating during this as atmospheric friction, as you talked about, really blazes from that heat shield. You know, I'll show you the model. They're coming in like this, heat shield forward into the stream of the atmosphere. The temperatures back here are getting up to 3,500 degrees, but inside the capsule, it's room temperature. This is a very sophisticated heat shield that SpaceX developed based on earlier NASA designs, and hopefully it's doing its job right now.
Let's hope. Is this the most critical moment for reentry, these 6 minutes?
Yeah, we're waiting right now to see if they can restore communications after this plasma heating zone. They just made a quick call to the capsule. We're waiting to hear a response.
All right, let's go ahead and listen to NASA then as they start to reestablish communications.
Dragon, SpaceX, comm check.
Denver has you loud and clear. We're about 3.9 G.
Copy, we've got you 5x5 as well, Doug. Looking good, and you can expect an automated chute deployment.
Copy.
All right, really good news there. We have come out of the blackout period and we have reestablished connection with Dragon Endeavour with NASA astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley on board.
We were able to reacquire that communication.
This is a big moment, the 6 minutes of blackout time as the crew was re-entering Earth's atmosphere. We are so excited to hear that communications have been reestablished. They're just a few minutes away from splashing back down. So, Scott, talk to us about the significance of this mission for SpaceX, for NASA, for space exploration in general.
Well, Anna, the thing that I believe most people, we kind of lose track of is that this is a test flight. The first of everything is you're trying to ensure that all the mathematical equations actually work out, that the procedures you put in place are accurate and correct, and you're going to learn from what you've done. And so this the big significance is that to this point we have had a process that has gone exceptionally well, and the experiment as it is has worked as you expect it to. You would also expect that there are 1,000 things behind the scenes that they've learned in the process to improve upon from the crew perspective, from the interface between the man and the machine, and for how things operate and what the sequences ought to take place. So in essence, the biggest thing is that it is a test flight. It appears it'll be, once it is splashed down safely, then it'll be a great success, and then it'll be a learning process to move forward. And as many innovators have figured out, is that you have to try something and make sure it works, and if it doesn't a little way, you're going to fix it. And so this is the first step for our country to get back into the manned space flight business, and to do it in an exceptionally innovative way, and to match not only government but the private sector with the government to make us something we can do and repeat very often in the future.
Scott, as you've been talking, we're seeing now the very first live view of the capsule as it's trying to make its re-entry back here to Earth. And as you mentioned, Scott, this is the first time that this has ever happened in human history. A private company with this new technology going out to the International Space Station, bringing U.S. astronauts up there for a successful mission, and what we pray and hope is a successful return. Everything looks like it is on track for that. Bill, talk to us a little bit more about the purpose of this mission beyond just making sure that it is possible. What have Hurley and Behnken been doing up there every day?
Well, they've been working hey, look at that. That's pretty cool. That's the Crew Dragon spacecraft being seen by a camera on a NASA WB-57 jet. They've zeroed in on it. You can see the drogue parachutes have deployed to stabilize the craft, and the 4 main chutes should be popping out momentarily. A major milestone in this mission, obviously.
So I think we see 2 chutes that are deployed right now, and then there's 2 more that are supposed to be coming out, Bill.
That's
Is that right?
These are the drogue parachutes that really kind of stabilize the spacecraft, slow it down a little bit, and then they have 4 much larger main parachutes that will deploy.
Oh, and it looks like we're seeing that deploy right now. Yeah.
That's correct. That's a huge milestone. During development of this spacecraft, they had quite a few parachute problems. They spent an enormous amount of time and effort to correct those, and all 4 chutes are out. This is a major moment in the mission. This is what everybody's been waiting for.
This is truly a beautiful image that we are seeing. The SpaceX Endeavour capsule on its way back to land in the Gulf of Mexico, just south of Pensacola, carrying astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley for the first ever commercial space flight, successfully docked at the International Space Station, and now it looks like on track for a successful re-entry back into Earth. In so many ways, this is new technology, but it's also a return to some old principles. Scott, going back to 1975, as Bill had mentioned, when astronauts used to make their re-entry by plopping back down into the water and then being retrieved. Tell us a little bit more about the technology, where it's headed and where it's been.
Well, I think that what this shows us is that sometimes going backwards is actually moving forward, and innovation is about finding the best ways to do things and the best ways to save money and to be able to get the most out of the resources you have available. So, while it was really cool to have the Challenger come back and land, efficiency-wise, this is a pretty simple system, but it looks simple for the average American. You just have these parachutes and they're going to make it land in the ocean. But, as I look at the time, it's they were going 17,500 miles an hour around the Earth, an hour ago. And now they're going to land within seconds in a location pretty darn close to where they expected to on Earth in the Gulf of Mexico. It's phenomenal what the scientists can make happen. But we use the simplest form possible to get the mission accomplished. So what I really like about it, and particularly in the capsule, is that, I flew my entire Air Force career with a bunch of switches that were designed in the 50s and 60s. They just put them in newer airplanes. Whereas this one, you've got some old technology and 4 parachutes that are bringing them to Earth. And then you've got a lot of modern technology inside the capsule with interfaces that are 21st century, touch screens, those kind of things. So it's a mix of the old and the mix of the new to get the best possible solution for our space program.
And now we are seeing the successful re-entry landing of the SpaceX Endeavour capsule there in the Gulf of Mexico. It is a beautiful sight to behold. Let's go ahead and listen again, if we can, control room, to NASA. And hear what they're saying to Bob and Doug at this moment.
NASA astronauts Bob and Doug.
On behalf of the SpaceX and NASA teams, welcome back to planet Earth, and thanks for flying SpaceX.
It was truly our honor and privilege to fly in flight of the Crew Dragon and Endeavour. Congrats, everybody at SpaceX. All good, and we're into section 4.800.
Thanks for those words, Doug, and we copy that you are into 4.800.
So great news all around there. Our space dads are back on Earth after a 19-hour return journey from space. Dragon Endeavour has splashed down in the Gulf of Mexico, just off the coast of Pensacola, Florida. And on your screen there, you can see our 2 fast boats, and they are indeed fast, racing out to greet Dragon Endeavour as it sits there. The first, on there we can see a view inside the capsule. Bob and Doug looking good. Although the communication was a little choppy, we did hear
Endeavour in 3.1. We show ourselves in stable 1.
And SpaceX copies for vehicle assessment, step 3.1, stable 1. Good news.
Stable 1, essentially. They're upright in the water. Stable 2, also another potential where it could be on its side or even upside down, but Dragon does have a water ballast system to keep it upright, where it's able to essentially pump seawater into bladders in the service section of the capsule. But they're upright. We already see the fast boats approaching. They touched down, came right on time at 11:48 a.m. Pacific, 1848 UTC. Bob and Doug now in the water, and the recovery ops, they've already begun. We already see the fast boats starting to move in. We're still maintaining that good communication back with Bob and Doug and the team here in Hawthorne. Pretty soon we should be getting the go for them to move in, begin their hypergol sniffs, and begin wrangling up those parachutes. But we can see Bob and Doug inside the capsule, back on planet Earth.
Yeah, those fast boats will be moving in to do a couple of things. They'll be performing what's known as a sniffer test. That's essentially to ensure that the air around the vehicle doesn't have any toxic fumes from the hypergolic propellants on board. So once we get the all clear from there, the water recovery lead will give the go for approach, and that's when the first fast boat will actually approach the capsule. Hopefully give a little wave to Bob and Doug through the window. And one of the team members will actually climb on top of Crew Dragon and begin to place the rigging equipment necessary to hoist Dragon out of the water.
This is a tremendous moment. We are witnessing history in the making. I couldn't help myself. I threw my arms up in the air and celebrated when I heard "Welcome back to planet Earth" and "Thanks for flying SpaceX." Bill, you've seen so many missions. What does this different mission, the new commercial space race, the successful re-entry of Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley back to planet Earth, what does this mean to you?
Well, you know, it's a major step for NASA. Now, it is a commercially developed spacecraft. SpaceX designed it, built it, they own it. But of course, NASA helped fund the development of the spacecraft, and they're going to use this to routinely ferry astronauts to and from the space station. Remember, NASA in the United States has not had the ability to launch people to orbit for 9 years, since the last shuttle flight back in 2011. During that period, they've been paying the Russians more than $80 million a seat to ferry U.S. astronauts up and down. So basically, this is signaling the resumption of U.S. human spaceflight after a nearly decade-long drought, and that's a big step for the country and for NASA.
And the Soyuz capsules that we've been renting out, how old is that technology? Because part of the reason why the U.S. shuttles program was shuttered was that it was an old program, and though technologically advanced, hadn't made the same level of advancements for several decades. How is this really taking it to the next level, and what does it mean in terms of greater space exploration beyond just the International Space Station?
Well, I would take issue with the statement that the shuttle was old technology. It was absolutely state-of-the-art, and there's no vehicle operating in the world today that can do what the shuttle did. The problem was the shuttle cost an enormous amount of money to fly. The goal here is to get the cost of spaceflight down to the point where it doesn't bankrupt the nation to send people up and down to space. And so that's what they're hoping to do here. Not only have a more affordable way to put NASA astronauts in space, but also to encourage the development of private sector use of low Earth orbit. In other words, SpaceX can take these capsules and launch private citizens if they want to, and they plan to down the road. And so can Boeing. Remember, Boeing is also building a commercial cruise ship, just like SpaceX, that will start flying with people, they think, next year. And so if they can open up the space environment to more people, they think that'll encourage the development of industry, both in orbit and beyond. And so that's really the goal here. It's to make space flight more affordable than it was back in the days of the space shuttle, where flights could cost anywhere up to, $750, $1 billion a pop.
And Bill, just to clarify, did not mean to disparage any of the truly tremendous minds that are working at NASA and on space exploration, but that was one of the lines of criticism as they were looking to shut down the shuttle program.
Absolutely.
But you're absolutely right that this is tremendous technology, and with the addition of SpaceX and Boeing now trying to advance the technology, potentially brings it to another level. So I want to bring that question question then over to Scott. I think I recall, Scott, when we were watching the launch, that you and I had a discussion too about the possibilities of space exploration that go beyond what we've ever seen before. And what does this moment mean to you in terms of that big question about what's out there and human capacity in exploring it?
Well, Anna, Bill alluded to the fact that the more we do this, the more we're going to get good at it, and the lower the cost will be. And I think what the answer to your question is that the American people love to innovate. They love to do new bold things, and by partnering between the private industry and NASA, what we're about to do is to take all of this to a next new level and do it in an exponential way. When you only get to send a shuttle up into space ever so often, it doesn't really get that exponential growth. The fact that between Boeing and SpaceX, we're going to see a lot more activity, and the cost is going to come down. I see what's going to happen is that we're going to get to the moon rapidly again, and then we're going to reach out to Mars. And let's face it, we've been to the moon once or several times, but have we been to Mars? Have we put people there? That's an exciting thing to think about, and I think that it is in our future, and it's now a realistic thing to reach towards. So I'm excited about it. It's going to be fantastic.
High expectations into literally the heavens. All right, CBS space analyst Bill Harwood and retired Air Force Colonel Scott Caine, thank you both for joining us in this historic moment as the SpaceX Endeavour capsule holding astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley has successfully re-entered the Earth, and those astronauts being retrieved from their mission right now. Thank you. We're going to take a quick break, but there's still a lot of news ahead, so stick with us. You're streaming CBSN.